Hi, everybody. This is Lee Hartman. I'm the winemaker at Bluestone Vineyard. I'm coming to you tonight from my basement, and very excited to be hanging out with everybody. We are going to taste through some Petit Mansengs. We started making Petit Manseng at Bluestone back in 2015. Was our very first time working with it, and I've made at least a small batch of it every year ever since. So we'll get to taste through 4 of those and talk about how it's used in our white wine program, how I blend with it, and how well it stands on its own as a single varietal wine. So we'll give everybody else a few minutes to join us. I know we sold a lot of our small tasting kits. We started doing small miniature bottles at Bluestone in the last few weeks, which has been really cool. These days, we are not able to do a lot in the way of just a traditional tasting where you get to come in, have somebody serve you and your friends a bunch of different wines and tell you about them. What we can't have happen is have everybody at the bar have a wine poured into it, and then everybody put their mouth on their glass, and then have that glass have more bottles coming in and out of it. So what we're doing now at Bluestone, you can kind of design your own flight. So if you come in and you wanted to taste 2 reds and 2 whites, or you wanted to just do the sweets, or you just wanted to do a couple of reserve stuff that you've never had before, or if you're really familiar with most of what we have on the list, but you just want to try the new things, you can do that now. So it's a really great way for everybody to have just what they want. And we encourage people to do 4, which is what we traditionally have in a flight. But if you just can't make up your mind and you want to do a 5th wine, or if you and some friends want to take some home with you, then you're able to do that, and you can share with people who weren't able to make it out to the vineyard. So if you hear any screaming in the background, that is my 4-year-old. He's very excited to be watching Despicable Me 3. So which is why I'm here in my basement. So it's a good place to escape and hang out with some bottles of wine. So just to talk a bit about Petit Manseng, by the way, if you are joining us, please feel free to say hey in the comments. Let me know who all's hanging out. Let me know if you have any questions. This is what I'm here for. I love to be able to talk about what I do and to taste through things with people. One thing that I really like about this setup is that traditionally when I'm pouring for the press club, which I really do miss doing that, but if I'm pouring for the press club or I'm pouring for people in the tasting room, I don't get to join in with you guys. But under the circumstances, I'm here at home, and we have small bottles to taste out of, so I get to taste through them with you. And so I'd love to hear your thoughts. I can give you some of mine. I can tell you about how these wines came to be, and some of the challenges of the vintages, and some of the really great things about every vintage as well. So Petit Manseng is becoming very popular in Virginia. One of the main reasons for it is traditionally, as grapes start to ripen, and actually not just grapes, but all fruits, you have this changing dynamic in the juice between acid and sugar. And as the season progresses, after veraison, which is where your berries start to soften, prior to in May, June, July, your berries are these tiny little lime-colored marbles. They're very hard, and there's no juice in them, and they would taste terrible if you ate them. But come August, they start to soften. The red berries start to turn red. The whites turn kind of this translucent yellow, and we start to look at the amount of sugar and the pH of the wine as well. The total acidity is a third thing that we're looking at, which is different than pH, but that might be a conversation for another day. when your fruit starts to ripen, you'll notice that you start to accumulate sugar and you get more and more of that. And inversely, you start to lose acidity. So as that acid starts to drop out and you start to gain sugars, sometimes you end up with much less acid than you would want when you were trying to get to a certain level of sugar, or maybe if you want to pick at a certain pH, maybe your sugar is not where you want it yet. But that's not the case with Petit Manseng. Petit Manseng is consistently the most sugar and the most acid of any fruit that we bring in, with the exception of maybe sparkling wine. We might bring in some Chardonnay early, but again, when you do that, you end up with a very low pH, more acid, but very low sugar. And that's intentional to try to keep the wine from having a lower alcohol, but also have a very fresh acidity as well. But with Petit Manseng, you end up with really low pH, really high sugars, and it's not something that you have to worry about like you do all of your other traditional grapes. So so that is a really, really cool thing, but it is kind of a double-edged sword. Sometimes, as we'll taste with one of our vintages here, it's not always the most hospitable environment for your yeast or for what you're trying to accomplish. Really low pH, high sugar content can sometimes be pretty tough on yeast, which is an issue when you're working with dessert wines, but also with Petit Manseng. So sometimes, like our 2016, there might even be a little bit of residual sugar left. Sometimes it's just a little bit more than those yeast can handle. But we'll get to all of that. Hi, Dottie. Hey, thanks for saying hello. Glad to have you guys joining us, and glad you guys are uncorked and ready to taste. So we had two options for anybody who wanted to join us with tasting tonight. We had the miniature bottles, as I already showed you. But if you really wanted to go all out and you had a couple people sharing with you, you could also get a 4-pack of full-size Petit Manseng bottles. So that's always an option as well. And we are very, very thankful for anybody who wants to join us one way or the other. So before we jump into our very first wine of the night, just a little bit of catch up of what's happening at Bluestone. We are staring at the very beginning of harvest season. I know the last couple of days we are hearing word from our friends on the other side of the mountain down near Charlottesville that they are getting started. They are bringing in their early stuff. They're bringing in their sparkling grapes. They're bringing in their Sauvignon Blancs, and haven't heard anybody bringing in still Chardonnay yet, but you know that's coming. We are traditionally about a week behind them, sometimes a little bit more, sometimes a little less, and there is nothing normal about this year in a vineyard or otherwise. So because we did get some late frosts, which means that we ended up losing a good amount of our crop in the springtime. We had those buds that started to pop open, and when they were hit with extreme cold, it got below 30 degrees, we saw a lot of those buds die off, and they were replaced with new buds, which would turn into new shoots that you can see as the canopy that produces all the green in the vineyard. But the one thing about it is that then there's very little fruit in there. So we are looking at a minimized harvest, but we still took care of our farm for the last several months. So we are looking forward to still what's looking to be a really good harvest, just a much smaller one. We're working with reduced Chardonnay numbers and reduced Muscat numbers, so we will have less Chardonnay and less Moscato this year because those were more susceptible. Those are earlier budding varietals, whereas Cabernet Sauvignon is very late to come out, so it barely saw any effect from the frost. But one way or the other, we'll probably start picking here in about a week, and we're really excited about it. We planted speaking of Petit Manseng, we planted our first Petit Manseng vines this year, and we won't get to harvest those probably until autumn of 2022. Right now, there's no fruit out there. They have very round leaves. They're getting to be about 2 to 3 feet tall. The leaves almost look like nasturtium leaves. So we're excited to see those shoots turn into trunks, and those trunks turn into canopy. And here in a few years, when I look out my front door, I'll see Petit Manseng vines, so or grapes coming in. So. Well, hey, thanks, guys. Thanks, Mike and Sonia. Glad to have you here. I think we'll jump into our very first wine, if you are tasting along with us. And if you have any questions, please do feel free to jump in. So the first one is our 2015 Petit Manseng. And I can't believe 2015 was 5 years ago. So this was our first time working with this, and it's interesting to me that I think we got about 2 tons that year, and I divided the lot actually between doing stainless steel and doing it in oak barrels. I always liked the idea of a barrel fermented white, and so I wanted to do that, but I also know that this is a very fruit forward wine, and I wanted to make sure that it wasn't, you know, as I say, for some other varietals, it wasn't all about the barrel, it was about the fruit too. So divided that up. We also did something different back then that we do now. And if you hold up some of your bottles, particularly, this is an advantage to having the smaller bottles, but if you hold up the clear bottles, they're different colors. And some of the older ones are darker, and it's not because that they have aged and they've become darker with time or anything like that. But in those first years where I was doing this, a lot of the aromatics in grape varietals, in varieties like Viognier or Petit Manseng, when you're working with them, you can extract a lot from the grape skin itself. So what we did was we would crush them to stem, and we would let the juice soak on the skins with the seeds and everything for anywhere from several hours to sometimes overnight. And that does 2 things. One, it extracts those aromatics, and it also raises your pH, which makes it a better environment for the yeast. As I was saying earlier, if your pH is down close to 3, that's down towards sparkling territory, and again, there you have less sugar to try to get through. So, but I really wanted to enhance the aromatics, really make this a big, bold kind of wine. And so we soaked it on the skins, separated it into stainless steel and oak, and then blended the final result. So go ahead and. It's always cool when you get to go back and taste a wine that you haven't had in a number of years and see how it's changed. And I think that one's holding up really well. Still has a lot of aromatics to it, but and that acid is certainly still there. But with 5 years, you know, since it's been picked, it has started to calm down. The edges are starting to soften. It has a bit of an elegance to it that I really like. And I think you can see that with a lot of wines, red and white, but with white wines, not every white wine is age worthy, but that also doesn't mean that every white wine wouldn't improve with a little bit of time in the bottle. So I don't know that this one should hang out for another 5 years, but I think it's drinking really well right now, and I think that generally speaking, barrel fermented whites, Viogniers, or certainly Chardonnays, I think some of our bottles get consumed a little bit too early. So I would say this one is tasting pretty good. If anybody has any thoughts on it, I'm always happy to hear what other people think. I'm very slow, and I can always talk about aromatics or what people can taste. but I really do enjoy talking about how these wines came to be and the story behind them. This was the last year that we ever did anything in stainless steel. I really liked it, but I liked the steel, and I also liked oak. But I'm not going to make two Petit Mansengs in two different styles. And sometimes when you try to blend things together, you split the difference, and then you lose some great qualities of those two different wines that you made distinctly. So 2015 was a really good year. This would have come in late September. All right, well, let's try this again. Sorry about that, everybody. Always embarrassing when that happens. So we'll give everybody a couple minutes to get back on here. One of the challenges to being on a farm is that sometimes you don't always have the best internet connection. So I do apologize for that. And so the internet at my house is the same as the internet at the vineyard. It's the same in the tasting room and down in my office. But yeah, out here, when you are reliant on a signal coming from the West Virginia mountains out in the Alleghenies, sometimes when you have a lot of rain in an afternoon, then sometimes you don't end up with the best signal. So now that we're back on, my dog started barking. We just got a new member of the family, Lieutenant Pickles, Tummy Tickles, that's his name. And so if you hear barking in the background, that's him. If it's laughter, that's the 4-year-old. So just all the more reason to be in the cellar sometimes. But so thanks for joining us again. Glad to have you back. We were just tasting through some Petit Mansengs. I talked a bit about what's happening here at Bluestone, and a little bit about the grape varietal, some of the challenges and some of the things that we like about it. So I hope that everybody hasn't waited too long for me to get my computer back on. But we were just starting on the 2016. So if you've already consumed the 2016 while you wait, no problem at all. But I was able to taste this for the first time in a very long time. And one of the challenges in 2016 was that high acid, high sugar makes a tough environment for yeast. So this one, even though we fermented it in barrel, which gives you a little bit more oxygen to the ferment, and it often will create a bit of a warmer environment as well. Wood is a fantastic insulator. So with fermentation being exothermic, it'll create heat, and so even with the temperatures up a little bit, even with oxygen being introduced, the fermentation, the juice or wine, depending on when you're talking about it, just didn't quite want to make it through. And so I waited a really long time and thought, if I move these barrels with a pallet jack and you move them out to the blacktop and you let them sit in the sun and warm up, and you keep stirring that yeast, hopefully it'll start kicking again, and will ultimately finish dry, which was my goal, And so sometimes when you are working with a wine like this, even though you wanted it to go dry, sometimes it still works out for the best. When you want to make sure that you have a balanced wine, I always think about wine balance as a seesaw, and this is something that many of us in Virginia have had just hammered into our minds by the team at Virginia Tech. Dr. Bruce Zocklin always talks about wine balance as a seesaw, and on one side you have kind of your sweetness, the roundness of the wine, and even if the wine isn't sweet, it talks about that richness in the wine. And on the other side, you have kind of the structure and plus acid. So if you have really high acid on one side, really pulling that side of the seesaw down, it will taste less sweet And if you have a wine that tastes too sweet, having some more acid would help bring some balance to it. And so this wine, even though it is not what I had intended, even though I did not want an off-dry wine, it does balance itself out quite nicely. And we were really well, I shouldn't say we were surprised. Maybe I was surprised, but others said they weren't surprised when we ended up winning a gold medal at the Governor's Cup with this. So, when I work with a wine for a year or 2 years or more, and then it's released to the public, you never know what the response is going to be. And sometimes I just love a wine and I'm just very on fire for it. And then it's released to the public and maybe the public disagrees with me on that. And sometimes I don't like a wine, or maybe it's not a wine that I would end up taking home a lot. And then other people are just nuts for it. And so this is one of those cases where my perception of the wine and the perception of the wine to the tasting public and to wine judges was different. And not every person, or not even the winemaker, has to have a wine be their favorite for other people to appreciate it and enjoy it. So I really like this one. It came around on me, and one of my favorite things to have with this is a plate of cheese. I always talk about having dessert wines or sweet wines go really well with a variety of cheeses. And I think that that's one of the challenges of a dessert wine, is that so often people pair up sweet with sweet, and then it's just way too much sugar on your palate. And so to have something dry like some cheese going with something that already has some acid and some sugar, it can turn into a really nice pairing. So glad it looks like hopefully we got everybody back on the stream by now. If you thought about it, any questions since we started the first time or the second time or in between, please do make sure to let me know. Love to hear your thoughts. So if you got the 4-pack of bottles, either the regular size or the miniatures, you undoubtedly noticed that there seems to be this terrible practical joke of having 4 bottles but having one year missing in the middle. And so when we buy fruit from Silver Creek, it's always, this is how much it is per ton, and that's great. And they always produce really great fruit pretty much every year. If you look at the map of where the fruit comes from, that's in the governor's case, their farm is pretty much always on there. So we're really glad to work with them. We've been buying fruit from them. This will be our 11th vintage working with them. But one of the things they do with Petit Manseng in particular is they have 2 set prices. And one is if you are making a dry style wine, and the other is if you want to make a dessert wine. And the reason that it is 2 different prices is that once you get to 25 bricks, in case that got cut off on the first video, bricks is kind of a short way of saying residual sugar. So if you are at 25% sugar in your juice with Petit Manseng, at that point, your fruit is about as ripe as it will get. After that, you might accumulate sugar per volume of juice, but you are going to end up with less juice. And what you are having happen is not just ripening, but you are having dehydration on the vine. So they start to lose water weight in their clusters, and for that reason, then they want to, rightfully so, they get more money per ton. It's still the same amount of sugar, it's just concentrated. And so there is a bit of, I suppose, a miscommunication about what kind of wine we wanted to make in 2017. And so by the time we said, oh, is it ready to pick? There wasn't a whole lot left. We only ended up with 1 ton instead of about 3 tons that we normally do. And So everything in 2017 that we made ended up getting blended away. And I think this is a really good time to talk about. We started making Petit Manseng with the intention of it just being a single varietal bottling. We just wanted to get a couple tons and make maybe 100, maybe 200 cases of this stuff. We would just say Petit Manseng, just like all of these 4 bottles do. But now it has found its way into, I think, 4 or so different blends that we do at Bluestone. So right now, if you come in, we've got the brand new Bridgewater Gold, which is this summer has been a bottle that I go to a lot. It is mostly Vidal Blanc. It's all fermented in acacia, and it is blended in with 1 barrel of Petit Manseng. And Petit Manseng being so aromatic, it doesn't take a lot of a big number in the blend. So this one's only about 15% Petit Manseng, and it is still quite apparent in the wine. Very similar to like Traminette and Beau. So we have Bridgewater Gold. We have Golden Hour, which is a blend of Petit Manseng and Viognier, which we made for the Virginia's for Lovers campaign. We also have it in our Wilton White, the wine that I make every single year for the Joshua Wilton House. That is actually 2/3 Petit Manseng and 1/3 Viognier. And those two grapes seem to work really well together. And when you're making a blend, Petit Manseng has very high acid and Viognier has very low acid. So both being very big aromatic varietals, having that those 2 pieces fitting together works really well. And I was glad to work with the team at Joshua Wilton and their kitchen team that they know their food and they know their menu, and they wanted to make a wine that would suit it really well. And so my family had a bottle of that at Joshua Wilton just the other week for my wife's grandmother's 94th birthday. So it was a good birthday, I think. She seemed like it was good. What else is there that has Petit Manseng? Golden Hour, Bridgewater Gold, Joshua Wilton. Oh, and my favorite wine that I've made this year was a collaboration with Jake Bushing. If you haven't had it yet, it's Orphan number 3. It was a lot of his wine that didn't have a home, blended with a lot of my wine that also didn't have a home. And so it is his blend of Petit Manseng and some white Cab Franc that we made. So we harvested our Cabernet Franc, and we didn't even make a rosé out of it. We just squeezed all the juice out, didn't let it soak on the skins, and by doing that, we made a white wine with it. So if you haven't checked that one out yet, I definitely encourage you to do so. We only made about 50 cases of it, and most of it's gone. So definitely one of those wines that worked out really well, and I wish we had several hundred cases of it. But we have a few left here. I think Jake might have a few cases left at Hark Vineyards, which is just over the mountain on 33. Once you get to the base of the mountain, you go a little bit south, and it's a beautiful place. So you can get that wine there or at Bluestone. So the question was, what wine are we on now? Thanks for helping us get brought back together now that we're on video number 2 or maybe 3. I'm not sure if the second one took. But we are about to get started on the current release in our tasting room, which is the 2018. So if you go to the tasting room right now and you looked at our list, this is the one that we are pouring right now. And if you like this one, I've enjoyed it for the last year or so since we first released it. I think we have somewhere between 10 and 20 cases left. But before we move on to that next vintage, so this is the 2018. Just gonna have these airplane bottles lining up down here. So 2018, good time to talk about that. I'll hope we're still on. So 2018 was a tough year. It just rained the entire time, and so when we start bringing fruit in, you know, you've kind of fought. Oh, Renee is jumping in and letting us know we only have a few cases left of the 2018. So thanks Renee. Glad to have it coming from somebody who would know better than I would. Renee works in our tasting room several days a week, and so if you ever have any questions in the tasting room, she is the person who will typically get to answer all of your questions. So I spend most of my time at the bottom of the hill or out on a tractor. Renee is the one who looks at the mountains of cases of wine and makes sure that our inventory is straight and all that good stuff. So good, just a few left. 2018 was just brutal. Sometimes harvest season is coming and you're just very excited about how everything is working out. The weather is great. Your vineyard is good and clean, and some years, and I think no worse than 2018. It's just a nightmare that you don't know how you're going to get through harvest. I think Shep Rouse has been making wine at Rockbridge since he started it in the 90s, and he said it was the worst vintage he's ever had in Virginia. Just you know, when it just rains the whole time, not only does it make things difficult physically to bring the fruit in, it's hard on the plants, it's hard on the fruit, and it's hard on you mentally. You're just trying to keep everything together and trying to make sure that not only are you able to get everything done, but you hope that you can get things done in a way that at the end of it all, you are proud of it and you are excited about the result, because you know you get one chance at doing this every year, and you hope that your efforts will be something that you can live with and you can put your name on it. So in 2018, I don't mind bragging about it, but I couldn't tell you how it happened, but our whites are fantastic. Like, we did something right. Whites are easier to make in a tough season. So because you end up separating the skin and the stems and everything from the juice immediately, you're able to cut down on a lot of spoilage or any problems with microbiological contamination that comes in from the field, whether that be mold or mildew or rot, anything like that. So making white wine is certainly easier in that regard. And there were wineries like Linden, I believe, didn't make any red wine in 2018. It was just it wasn't worth it. We all made a lot of rosé. All right. Well, we are going to give everybody just a couple seconds to get back on real quick. I'm just going to try this with my phone instead of trying with my computer, which seems to have failed me yet again. So I am so sorry about that. So the last thing that we were looking at today is our 2019 Petit Manseng, which has not been released yet, but it will be released probably in the next month or so. So give people a last chance to get the 2018 if that's what they liked there, and then we'll be releasing this one coming up. As I said, if you wanted to taste the 2019 in a blend, we do have that all ready for our Bridgewater. Bridgewater Gold is already up and running. But for this wine, 2019 and 2018 could not possibly have been more different in the way that the seasons treated us. And for 2019, it was about as close to perfect as I've ever worked with. So this fruit came in. We worked with Silver Creek, but we also got a ton or two from Livingston Vineyard. Rion and the team there are exceptional grape growers. They're wonderful people. I love hanging out with them. Love tasting their wines as well. A couple years ago, I was talking to him, and he said, "Would you like to buy some Petit Manseng? We're going to move to only doing reds." And I said, "Sure, I'll take your Petit Manseng from this year." And then the following year, he said, "We haven't pulled the trigger yet on being only reds." So we got it from him in 2019. This year with 2020, as there was a frost, grapes are harder to come by for a lot of people. So they are going to keep all the fruit that they are growing this year. But in 2019, that fruit just came in. Everything was great. We were very excited. We separate. I like to separate out everything into as many lots as possible early, and then I get to blend things together later. So even though this is a blend of both Silver Creek's Petit Manseng and Livingston's Petit Manseng, they were all done separately. And in fact, I actually separate out into what are called press fractions, where the first stuff that falls into the press pan is the cleanest, purest juice, and then the last stuff that you squeeze out is a little bit tougher, a little bit murkier, a little bit more astringent, and so we ended up doing that as well. So this one had lots and lots of different lots. Every barrel was different and unique. But then once you blend them together, you can say, this one is very clean and has some bright aromatics to it. This one was harder pressed. It gives it a little bit more tannic structure, that sort of element to it. And that's a nice way of doing it. And that way you can say, I don't like this barrel. It doesn't belong in this blend, and you can separate out those things. So I believe somebody asked a question on the last video right before it fizzled out on us. But for that 2018, how long will it age? I think it is a clean enough wine. It has enough acid to it that you could hold on to it for another 3 to 5 years. But I think it's drinking really well right now. I have one of the most first world problems I've ever found myself to have during this time of quarantine and isolation. We find ourselves opening up these special occasion bottles on a random Tuesday night, and that's fine to do. We've begun to think that rather than just waiting for the special occasion, maybe some of these bottles are the special occasion. And too many have we opened up where we say, oh man, should have opened that up 5 years ago. And so I think that aging wine is great, and I'm excited to have wine to hold on to and to see what happens to it. But wine is also very much meant to be consumed. So for the 2018, if you think that some time for it to calm down would be beneficial, then you should totally do that. But if you think that it's drinking well now, then I would encourage you to enjoy the day and to definitely just go ahead and give that a try. So the 2019, just a great year. This one is rated about 14% ABV. And I'm really excited to be releasing this one out into the wild, so to speak, to have people tasting it. I think that in its youth, speaking of aging wine, of the four that you're going to taste today, this one has the most minerality and kind of a grip to it. It still has that acidity to it that is going to give it a lot of focus, but the texture of this wine, I think, is very fresh and exciting, and you got to see what some of the earlier bottles were like after a few years, and that's one of the fun things about a vertical tasting. But I think that this one is showing really well right now, and I'm glad to be able to have it tonight. So any questions before we go? Sorry, I am. All right. Well, like I said, if you have any questions, if you'd like to do this again, we do have more miniature bottles of all 4 vintages if you'd like to share with a friend, if you'd like to taste these wines where they were made. We'd love to have you out at the vineyard. We are open for flights, even though we're not doing tastings. Just call. The number is. Which bottles can you buy now? 2018 is what is currently released, but if you call ahead and ask for the 2019, we might be able to help you out with that. And while supplies last, I think that we probably have 5 or 6 bottles each of the 2015 and 2016. So if you want any 2015 or 2016, thanks for the reminder of pointing that out. They might all be gone tomorrow, but if you call us and come on out, we have a few bottles left of those as well. So yeah, if you guys would like to come out and have some miniatures or snag those last bottles from the library, we'd love to have you guys out. Please don't forget your mask. Please don't forget to follow us here on Facebook, or my page is Lee Hartman, winemaker, and follow me this harvest season. We've got a lot of work ahead of us, but it's going to be a lot of fun. So thank you guys so much for joining. Thanks for putting up with the technical difficulties. I'm better with barrels than I am a computer, but thanks again, and we'll see you guys next month, which will be, I believe, a Viognier tasting. So stay tuned for that. Thanks.